So if your focus is on your problem and your pain, that's a very big psychological trip up to then help reinforce that reality. So you have to look past the pain, you have to look past it into your recovery and what your life looks like when you get your function back, when you're on the other side of that. So psychologically, I think that's a big deal.
Stem cells, it appears, most of the research on them shows that they act more as signaling molecules. They're calling upon your body's own cytokines and inflammatory factors and your own endogenous stem cells to enhance repair and recovery. So they're almost just stepping up the body's natural repair mechanisms. They're enhancing your body's own repair processes.
The FDA has announced that they have the fast track available for these regenerative products. You know, every once in a while, as new developments come through in medicine, you see something you've never seen before. And to see this in myself, I never imagined that in 2 weeks I would have complete pain relief.
I just got to the point where lack of sleep and constant pain, and I mean constant pain, 24/7 pain. I did the shots, and then, very interesting, within a couple of days of when I had the shots, I slept for the first time all night. It was magical.
Welcome to episode 5 of Pain Revealed. Well, here we are. We're about halfway through this process, and as you can see, we've covered a lot of ground, but what I can promise you, there's a lot more ground to cover. Things are coming up that might be unexpected for you, stimulating, innovative, something that might be a solution you haven't thought of before. So we're really happy to continue this journey, to keep talking about these things, keep presenting them, and sharing them with you. As you know, you can own Pain Revealed. It's something that I believe will help you. It's information you can go back to over and over again. You can watch it on demand now at your convenience. So I highly encourage you to invest in the Pain Revealed series. We've made it affordable. You can just choose whatever package you want that works for you and then have it, own it, share it, etc. Nothing would make me happier if it somehow contributed value to your life. So here we go. We're going into episode 5. Enjoy it. I'm excited to share with you my interview with Dr. Pedram Shojai. Pedram is a bright light in the world. He's somebody who doesn't pull any punches when he's sharing his wisdom, but he cares. And he's got phenomenal information and insight. So let's jump in, enjoy this interview. Pedram, I'm very much looking forward to this conversation because I watch you on the other side of this interview thing where you're making a lot of documentaries and so on really important health subjects. So thanks for being an interviewee this time.
Thanks. It's fun to be on this side of it. You know, it's great to ask the questions, and once in a while you're like, "Whoa, yeah, I know something about that."
You have some answers too, don't you?
Yeah.
That's great. So we're here mostly talking about pain. I know you have a lot of experience in the wellness world. You know, well.org is your website amongst other things. You've written books on this stuff, but when it comes to pain, even people who pursue a wellness lifestyle can be in pain.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, pain is something that affects all of us, and pain is something that can't be ignored. Yeah. And I don't care if you're an elite athlete, I don't care if you're just a normal person, something can happen, lightning strikes, buses, hit people, and then all of a sudden you're in pain. And pain is just this funny creature, right? Like it has effects on the brain. There's very specific cytokine activity that impacts the whole body. And I used to do this all the time with my staff. I'd say, listen, they're not trying to be rude to you. Mm-hmm. You have no idea what it's like to be in 9 out of 10 pain. I mean, I'd have people burning holes in the carpet of my waiting room just coming into my clinics. It's like the pain makes you cranky. It makes you snap.
So you have a good deal of experience directly working with people who are in pain. And it sounds like when you're saying 9 or 10, it's probably like acute pain, where something just happened that they have to deal with. What do you think some of the biggest misconceptions are around pain?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first is, if pain, then drug, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest challenges I've ever seen, because people have been trained to medicate, and we now live in kind of the post-heroin reality, right, where we have seen what happens with OxyContin. We have seen what happens with some of these pain drugs, and so doctors, it's so easy to be like, here you go. Here you go. And we've created a generation of addicts. We've created a lot of problems. And because of that, we are now trying to find our way back. But people are not tolerant of pain. People have been trained in this, a pill for an ill model. And if I can't get the pill, I'm mad at my doctor. This still sucks. This isn't okay. What are you going to do for me? And it's bringing a little bit more personal responsibility. It's bringing in lifestyle. It's bringing in biofeedback and meditation and a lot of other things that we know work. They're not as easy as the pill, but they're also not addictive.
Well, you're a doctor of Oriental medicine, so in your practice, obviously, you weren't, pill pushing.
Right.
So when somebody would show up and they're in 9 or 10, on a scale of 10 in pain, extreme pain, what were some of the things you would do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you comfort them, right? Because they're agitated as well, and so you bring them out of that agitated state, and then it's just about. It depends on the diagnosis. I mean, if someone's got a disc sitting on a nerve. Yeah. It's time, right? I mean, I had physiatrists in my practice. I had all the tools in the shed. But at the end of the day, you can bring down inflammation so there's this mechanism that we are understanding much better now. It's a protein complex basically called NF-kappa B. And what it does is it controls cytokine activity in the body. So it controls the gene expression for cytokines. We understand this to be the holy grail of inflammation, pain. Inflammation, first of all, is the mother of all disease. If you could control inflammation, you are saving lives. But inflammation leads to pain, right? We understand that. And so what helps modulate this? There are tons of studies coming out right now showing that mind-body practices, meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, help modulate this NF-kappa B, which means bringing down cytokine release, right? And so you look at this, and it is the holy grail. And what can do that? Okay, so there's the mental stuff, and there's acupuncture, right? There's the energy work, and we're just starting to understand that. But anyone who's had acupuncture has this really interesting experience where they're like, oh, I was so afraid because the needles and the da-da-da-da, and everyone's afraid of needles, right? You go in there, you get these little tiny needles put in you, and all of a sudden you are in this meditative state where you are so relaxed. People will tell me that I was floating on the table. I'm floating, I'm flying, I didn't want to get off. And something happens where you triggered this state. And we are now coming to understand that it is modulating this gene expression and bringing down cytokine activity. So basically the whole body's inflammation comes down. When that starts to happen, you have space, you have resilience in the body to then suddenly do the stretching you wanted to do, whatever it is, to start getting out of the bind that you're in.
So it's interesting because you're really talking a lot about the mental or the psychological aspects of this whole dynamic. So I guess from a physical level, you can take two people, they have physically maybe the same thing going on, but their psychological stress response to the pain experience could be very, very different and can be managed.
Yes. This thing's a problem-solving device. So if my shoulder's hurting me and it's been bugging me all day, I've been focused on my shoulder. Then someone brings me a bag of ice or something. My shoulder feels better. Now I'm worried about my bills or whatever it is, right? It'll keep moving. And so when you start to find how the focus or the kind of the nexus of control of perception is related to pain, you start to be able to play with, I would send people for biofeedback, neurofeedback, meditation. I mean, there's herbs, there's acupuncture, there's remedies, and then there's self-care. And to me, when you really want to address pain, if you don't invoke and involve the patient in that, you've missed it, because now they're coming in for their Band-Aid. They're coming in for you to do something to them. And that's fine in the short run, but look, pain is a very, very tough thing to live with. And how many hours in the week, how many hours in the day can you come pay a practitioner to help bring that fire down? You better have a doggy bag that goes out with them.
Yeah, well, and that's very interesting as far as saying it's more like you have to collaborate with them as compared to say do something to them. And I'm wondering, like some people, and this could be upsetting for them to be listening to somebody who's been in chronic pain. They've now self-identified with it, like, oh, my whatever I have, my sciatica, my back pain, my neck pain, my arthritis, whatever it might be. And now we're sitting there saying, no, wait a minute, you have responsibility for how you're experiencing that pain. You can't be just a victim and hope to get better and say, here, fix me. It's a matter of saying, I got to take responsibility now.
So I've been skiing all day today in the trees. Rule number 1 of tree skiing is when you're in the trees, you don't look at the tree, you look past the tree. Because if you look at the tree, you're hitting it.
Right.
So
you go where you're looking.
you go where you're looking, right? So if your focus is on your problem and your pain, that's a very big psychological trip up to then help reinforce that reality. So you have to look past the pain, you have to look past it into your recovery and what your life looks like when you get your function back, when you're on the other side of that. So psychologically, I think that's a big deal. We're also working against an industry that has spent billions of dollars saying, it's cool, I got it, here's your product. Right? So it takes all personal power out of the deal. The equation has been shifted where now people expect to come in, receive some sort of remedy like double clicking an app and it's just there.
Right.
And then they walk out and it's better. And they're so frustrated that their doctor didn't just fix it. And so pain is just one of the really, really tough areas of medicine where we're working against this pill for an ill model and really recruiting the enthusiasm and the energy of the patient to be a part of this process. I cannot be with you 24/7. And if you don't do something about it, the pain will be.
It's interesting, and I had somebody say this to me once because I've, from athletics and other things, I've been in chronic pain, for periods of time, broken bones, blown discs, those types of things, so I can relate firsthand. And I remember, because chronic pain can make you a little depressed, right? So psychologically you start getting depressed and you feel like a victim, like, you're suffering all the time. And then I just wanted something to fix it, make it go away. And I remember somebody saying to me once, a doctor saying, do you just think that you're entitled to a pain-free life? Like, when you feel pain, it should have to go away. It's wrong. You have to kind of change your relationship with pain, in a sense, is what it seems like.
Well, and so our culture, the entire thing is an aversion to pain culture. Right? And then you start looking at the tenets of Buddhism, right? So I'm a Taoist monk. I've spent a lot of time, I studied with the Dalai Lama. And so when you're sitting there in meditation and your shoulder starts to light up and you start to go, oh man, no, you start to move away from that pain. What happens is you're going to ski right into that tree. So you accept the pain and you breathe through it and you say, okay, what is my shoulder telling me? What's happening? What's my lesson here? What is the unlock, right? And a lot of people will be like, well, I don't deserve this. It's like, look, it's easy for us all to feel sorry for ourselves. I tore my labrum in my hip when I was 15 years old. I was a trail runner. I just don't trail run anymore, right? But I could still ski down a mountain. And so you adjust, you adapt. And then the question really is, what is this shoulder or this hip or whatever body part asking me to do? What is my lesson here? And so for me, it's take some more time, stretch out before you do things. I mean, in my 20s, I could just go run up and down a mountain and whatever, right? Now that I'm in my 40s, I'm you measure thrice, cut once. I will stretch, I will warm up, and then I could still do the things that I want to do. And then it's not like pain is gone, right? I'm in pain right now. I've been skiing all day. Like, you get sore, but then what do you do about it, right? So the Chinese medical approach to pain is it's a stagnation of qi, which is energy, and stagnation of blood. So when you are not flowing correctly, right? So if I had a dam right here and the river is here and it's hitting against the dam, you start to get this swelling on one side and a vacuity on another. So it's empty on one side and on the other side it starts to swell. And this is the pain point. So in Chinese medical thinking, if you could take away this obstruction and get the smooth flow of energy and blood beyond this, the water distributes, the blood distributes, the pain goes away. And I've seen this hundreds and thousands of times in clinical practice. You know, someone's been like, hey man, I've been to everybody. No one's been able to fix me. You're my last hope, no pressure, right? I mean, that's what happens when you're in the alternative medical realm, right?
Like you call yourself the last resort clinic?
Yeah, that's it, right? And they come in, it's like, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope, right? And you're like, great. And then they have a chart this thick with all the drugs they've been on and all this stuff. You just look at them, you look at how they carry themselves, you look at how their body's moving, you get them to just kind of move correctly, and you move the blood and the chi. That's a miracle. I can't believe this happened, blah, 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 blah. You know, and I've actually had people on the table like come in and ask me, it's like, hey, do you believe in acupuncture? I'm like, no, I just do this, as a con job. Like, what do you mean, do I believe in acupuncture? And they're like, well, I have a hard time believing this. I'm like, I'm not asking you to believe in acupuncture. I did not believe in acupuncture. I experienced acupuncture, and I know it works.
Right.
This isn't a temple of belief here.
Right, it's not a
Let's
religion.
Just, yeah, it's not a religion. Let's just do something and see if your shoulder's better.
Yeah.
And that's I mean, look, it's been around for 5,000 years for a good reason.
Yeah, exactly. And with your experience, like working with people, and they're having these varying challenges, is there a context to say that, you know, the pain, because as you're describing it, you know, as you're educating me about this perspective that, you know, this lens that you look through, it's almost saying, hey, you know, the pain is there to kind of alert you to something that you need to pay attention to. So it's good that it's there, because now you can take action to kind of dissipate a problem that is just the pain is the effect of. So is there some way to, like, I don't want to say have gratitude for the pain, but to acknowledge that there's some value in it?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I have a teacher, the teacher makes it hard.
Right.
And I get better, right? The literal translation, so the traditions of Chinese medicine come from Kung Fu. The literal translation of Kung Fu is hard work. And there's another way to translate it, which is eat bitter. And so when you get better at being resilient against these stressors, then you're able to resolve bigger and bigger problems, right? It's like if you had a math book and you're just like, oh man, so many problems. It's like, yeah, they're meant to be solved.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's how you get better at math, is you solve more and more complex problems. So if you have a problem in your body, there's two ways to go about this, right? And so I think that the challenge with the industry is everyone is problem oriented, right? It's just like, okay, well, let's fix your problem, let's focus on your problem. You still have the problem, right? And so when you get so focused on the problem, you don't have the resilience to deal with it. We have this in a big way with emotional trauma. It's like, oh yeah, let's talk about that. And then a guy named Marty Seligman came around and created this whole field of positive psychology, which is, how about we big you up so that you can kind of be better in life, and then we can look at this from a higher vantage point where we're not feeling god awful terrible about all of our circumstances in life, and then we could resolve this together. Right? And so for me, it's like, okay, let's work on just making you feel better. Let's work on your attitude. Let's work on some goals. Let's work on what it is that you can do. And God, how about just having some fun, right? Just getting some endorphins going. We understand that endorphins are very powerful for modulating pain, right? So if you have been hurt, and you can't do the thing that you do, if I can't get you to have fun doing something else, I'm not helping you pull out of this hole here, right? And so it's about building the endorphins, building the resilience, building this psychology around something positive, and then problem solving and working through, whether it's the rehab or the herbs. There's a million ways to address pain, but if you focus on pain, you're hitting that tree.
You're a master of this health philosophy. So obviously you spent decades really learning it, understanding it, applying it. What got you started on this trail? Why did you decide that this was the way you wanted to pursue your career as compared to maybe a more traditional Western way?
So I was in UCLA. I graduated #1 in my class in high school, marched straight into UCLA with a bunch of extra units, interning at the UCLA Pain Medicine Center.
Ah, interesting. I didn't know that, yeah.
Yeah, this is my path. Pain is what brought me on this path. And I had pain on my own, but frankly, it was, when I was growing up, it was be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer. You're an immigrant, get to work. We got you over here. Now do something with your life. And I'm like, okay, I'll be a doctor, right? And so I'm in this pain medicine center, and I'm depressed, man. The corridors are just long and stinky. The lights are flickering. It's just disgusting in there. And I just got to the point where I pulled over the attending doc, and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, sir, but I just have to ask this question. I'm a scrub. I'm just a freshman, right? I get asked this question, and I was like, what are we going to do for these people other than just put them on morphine? That's all I saw for months, right? Is they'll come in, they'll get their morphine drip, they get carted out, doped up on a wheelchair. And I'm like, this isn't what I signed up for. And he looks me straight in the eyes. He said, son, I don't think you understand what it is we're doing here. We're just hoping Mrs. Smith dies of natural causes before we kill her. There's nothing we can really do.
Wow.
And as we were like this close, and as he's talking, there's distance being created because I'm just finding myself walking backwards. And he's talking, and I'm getting further and further away from him. This is visceral, kind of like I hit a gong. And he's like, hey, where are you going? We got to go in here. And I took one last look at him. I turned around and I walked away.
Wow.
Because I was looking down the barrel of a life that was completely unfulfilling. And this guy, I mean, look, he's a nice man. He's trying.
Right.
But the model was just broken. What am I doing on the side here? I grew up in the generation where everyone wanted to be Luke Skywalker and a Jedi.
Right.
I find a Tai Chi class, and I start taking this class, and I'm like, whoa, what is that? I feel it. You could see just this blurry, wonderful, energetic thing between your hands and the leaves, and you're out in the lawn, and you're just filled with vitality. And I really had this. I was like, wow. This one life of mine is filled with vitality, and then I go into this hospital corridor, and it's just fatality and pessimism, and just there's a lack of enthusiasm in all of it. And so I just started pursuing this path of Tai Chi and energy, and being like, I don't believe in this energy. Like, whoa, you guys feel that? And I found a Kung Fu master who took me under his wing, and fast forward, I become a Taoist monk, I become a Taoist priest, a Taoist abbot, a Qigong master, a doctor of Oriental medicine. And it was all this like wonderfully encapsulated holistic system that worked together. And if you want to learn how to kill in Kung Fu, you better learn how to heal first.
Right.
And so you're a martial artist. It's just, it's a wonderful, cohesive system that just makes sense and it works.
Well, what's amazing is how a philosophy, which most people think, oh, it's just abstract, but how a health philosophy can lead in directions. And one direction is that, I try to remember the descriptor you used about the hallway and the place. It was disgusting, I think you said, right? So it's the disgusting place where they just try to they try to not kill you before your time is up naturally otherwise. And that literally is just the culmination of a philosophical foundation on how to achieve health or how to manage pain or what have you. And now, because you said that there's something about the value system there that didn't connect with you, even at that early stage, you went on a completely different exploration and basically found your calling, found your home.
Yeah.
So I guess this is leading to the question, which is maybe a loaded question at this point, but how important is it for an individual to really develop a health philosophy? Not just jump in and see a commercial on TV from a pharmaceutical company telling you this is what you need to do, but actually take a step back and think about their philosophy around such things.
It's the meaning between life and death. I mean, we have been hijacked. The medicine of antiquity, the medicine of the past was built on a philosophy of vitalism, which is, hey, I have this thing that if I enhance the health bank account fills up and then I'm more resilient, right? It's the reason why you do Pilates and all these things before exercising, right? You train to play, not play to train. And so the vitalistic philosophies really just took a nosedive with allopathy not too long ago. And we're talking about 100 years. You get battlefield medicine. You find a way to sterilize equipment. You discover how to mass produce penicillin. What does that mean? That means my guys get out of the infirmary and they could shoot your guys faster. And it won wars and it had its little heyday, but it was a very small piece of medicine that took over philosophically, and what it did, whether by hook or by crook, it disempowered the individual. The individual who's ultimately responsible for their health, their decisions, their well-being, basically relegated that and said, help me, doctor, fix me, right? If you don't know how to defend yourself, you say, help me, state, fix me, help me, policeman. And so you just keep giving away your personal power until you're a victim.
Right.
And so philosophically, You are the only one that's in charge of your health. And the doctors are all there to support and help you with their expertise. But if you don't step in and you're sitting there saying, hey, whatever you did, it still hurts.
Right.
That's a really tough position to be in. And I've been dealing with, and I've owned clinics with pain management specialists and multiple doctors. The ones that change their attitude are the ones that get better.
And this is the interesting thing, I guess, in part in what you just said here is a matter of setting expectations, right? Like, what are your expectations for showing up here and, making sure that you don't feel like there's some miracle quick fix thing that's going to happen just because you showed up. Yeah. And I think that's probably the hard part.
Well, they've been trained in that way, right? It's like, hey, I got my fender is bumped. I'm going to pull it into the body shop. I'll be back in a couple days. Just tell me when it's done. Here's your check.
Right.
That does not work for health, right? And so I would disqualify patients coming into the clinic. I said, listen, unless you are enrolling in this, right? Not some sort of like weird MLM philosophy where I'm saying go buy my oils or stuff. But if you're not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because there's all sorts of weird business stuff that happens. So unless you can actually be enrolled in self-care, you are still in there having expectations of a practitioner that are unreasonable.
Right.
Like, I've gone to a lot of school. I've done a lot of specialty training. All the docs in my clinics were brilliant at what they were doing. But if you come in with an attitude of fix me, I never see it work out. It just doesn't.
So should the attitude be assist me rather than fix me?
Help me understand what's happening here because you have expertise in this shoulder thing that I didn't go to school for. What do I have to do? What do I have to eat? How do I have to manage this? What herbs can I take? What can I do that's more natural? Help me. Let's do this together.
Yeah.
Right? And those are the ones that get better.
Yeah. And it's gratifying to watch them when they get better, right?
Well, I mean, listen, no one wants to be depressed about what they do. It's very easy. Like, so neurology is a profession in medicine that's considered one of the most depressing, highest in suicide. Right. I'm really, really good at understanding a lot of science to tell you what's wrong with you. Now get out of here. It's so
Where's
not
the humanity?
Yeah, it's so not gratifying.
Right.
And so I actually, as an acupuncturist, work with a lot of neurologists that would send me a stack of stuff and say, this is what's wrong with them. And I'd look at the person and we'd treat them. And then all of a sudden they'd be like, thank you. And thank you, doctor, for making this referral. Right? Because now I'm actually better. Right? It's just, if you could just diagnose somebody and say, I'm sorry, but this is what you have. To me, it's relevant because that's what their job is. But if you stop at just medical cursing.
Medical cursing, I love that. Yeah.
Right? Oh, you have this thing. It's a really big word and it's going to suck. And I don't know what we could do for you. Bye. And don't forget to pay out the door. I mean, that's where healthcare has gone. Right. I'm so specialized. I can tell you exactly what's wrong with you, but if you want to go find someone to fix you, I don't even know where that.
Yeah, I get it. Well, listen, I really appreciate it. This is an inspiring philosophy. A lot of times people come in and it almost sounds morose about, pain and how to deal with it and the challenges. It's energizing and inspiring to hear this philosophy in this context about pain and what it means, and literally almost can have you not maybe be happy, but embrace the fact that it's there and be inspired about the fact that when you transcend it, you're a better person.
Amen. I mean, listen, if you look at pain as your teacher and you slow down and turn, in Taoist meditation we call it retroflexion. You turn your attention to the place that's generating this signal and you learn to heal yourself by this beacon that's pulling you up. You're on the super highway of life and something is just saying, hey, pull over, pull over, pull over. The question is, where was I headed? What was I doing? What do I need to learn from this? And how do I better adapt?
Right.
To get back on the road of life. And maybe I was just on the wrong path. Pain is a teacher. And if you look at that philosophically in that way, not only is it going to help you get better faster, it's probably going to enrich your life in a way that you did not understand or apprehend because you were too busy staying on that track that was continuing to generate the pain.
That's brilliant. So I think that's a great place to stop and reflect and say pain is a teacher. And I really appreciate you bringing an inspiring message to this subject, which a lot of people feel uninspired about. So thank you for that. And I appreciate your time here.
Thank you.
Isn't Dr. Pedram just terrific? I learn something from him every time I'm around him. So I'm really glad I got to share this with you. I just love Ben Greenfield. This guy is crazy in the best possible way. He is like his own science experiment, always wanting to push the envelope, find out what the latest and greatest thing is, and not just recommend things for other people, but to do it on himself first to find it all out. So Ben is a very romantic character, he's a very visionary character, and he's a very powerful character. So you're gonna like this interview. Let's dive in. Ben, it's so great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. First up, give me your background, and then I want to talk to you about your stem cell history. Where do you come from, and how did you get here?
Well, I suppose I should begin my background by saying I'm not a doctor, so don't misconstrue any of my stem cell advice as medical advice. I'm more of an immersive journalist in a sense, to where I do like to explore a lot of medical therapies or biohacks or things that would allow one to get a better body or brain, and kind of N equals 1, some of those things on myself, if they turn out to be relatively safe upon my initial research. But my background is in exercise physiology and biomechanics, which is what I studied at a master's level at University of Idaho. Mm-hmm. And since then, in competition as a pro athlete for the past couple of decades, and consulting with people from all over the world and trying out a lot of these procedures on myself. Everything else has just been self-education and amassing a body of knowledge and responding to many fringe, strange questions on my podcast that have kind of forced me to read different books and dive into different avenues, and stem cells is one of them.
So in addition to amassing a wide body of knowledge, you've also amassed a wide body of injuries. Is that what drove you into stem cell treatment originally?
I mean, especially with Ironman, with a lot of obstacle course racing, I do beat up my joints. I have nagging aches and pains, just like I think anybody does. Really, my initial impetus, though, and interest in stem cells, it actually stemmed from an article that I wrote in Men's Health magazine, where they hired me to go on this 3-month foray into everything a man could do to enhance his sexual performance. So, reduced ejaculation frequency and gas station libido pills and PRP and infrared light, all of these different protocols, and one of them was stem cells. Right. So I went down to a clinic in Florida and had the adipose tissue extracted from my low back, and then grown enzymatically for a few months, and then had that re-injected into my genitals. And then after that, because I had all those stem cells available, I wound up doing a systemic injection, or a systemic IV, almost like an anti-aging tactic for stem cells. And it wasn't until my third treatment that I got any joints done at all. And when I did, the results were profound. I mean, you generally want a practitioner that's going to use some kind of imaging, like ultrasound imaging, to guide the stem cell delivery into the area where there might be a fusion or an area of inflammation. Or when you look at it on an ultrasound, it's kind of like a black area in a sea of white inside the joint. And when they inject that area and allow the stem cells to kind of live in that joint, it's actually, a lot of people think that the stem cells are what are healing the body, right? They're these magical little compounds that we inject into a joint to allow it to heal, or into our body systemically to replenish more stem cells so that we age less quickly. Mm-hmm. But stem cells, it appears, most of the research on them shows that they act more as signaling molecules. They're calling upon your body's own cytokines and inflammatory factors and your own endogenous stem cells to enhance repair and recovery. So they're almost just stepping up the body's natural repair mechanisms. There are other things that do that, right? Like fasting is a perfect example, right? That's going to amp up your own cell-to-cell communication. You find that a lot of people who will fast, some of their joint pain begins to subside, and part of that is the cellular autophagy and cellular cleanup and increased migration of growth factors and the things that can occur with fasting. And you see something similar, but to a greater level, with stem cells. Mm-hmm. So, I've had my knees done, I've had my left elbow done, just various one-off treatments, but I've also done at a clinic in Park City, Utah, just a full body, where I underwent sedation and did a full musculoskeletal injection of stem cells and exosomes and platelet-rich plasma, and some of the things that can kind of upgrade stem cells or their signaling mechanisms. I can tell you right now, I recover from my workouts just as quickly as I did when I was, an 18-year-old tennis player. I bounce out of bed in the morning and my joints feel very supple, very young. I still injure myself. I still have nagging aches and pains, but I actually now turn to stem cells if I have them available, because I have my fat stem cells stored. I've got my bone stem cells stored. And then there's a lot of practitioners now who I see who don't even need my stem cells, right? They're using exosomes, they're using pancreatic derivatives, there's placental-derived cells that they can inject now, and there's even intranasal stem cells. So there's a lot of things you can do beyond your own stem cells, but now that's my go-to if I really mess up a joint. And as we're talking right now, I've had a pancreatic stem cell injection into my knee, and this was, it felt like it was about 10% just 3 weeks ago, and I was doing squats in the gym this morning.
Let's dial this all the way back to the Men's Health article, your first foray into stem cells. Was that effective for you? Were you able to notice a difference from the treatment?
Yeah, when I did a stem cell injection into my penis, I definitely noticed, you see an increase in blood flow, you see a little bit of an increase in size, you get longer orgasms, there's kind of that positive cycle, you're having more sex or better sex, so, there's a little bit of a libido and testosterone enhancing effect from that. Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of other variables though, right? Like in a typical stem cell injection for the genitals, you would be prescribed or given advice to take a lot of like nitric oxide precursors, right? Like beet or pycnogenol or flavanols from cacao. Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of folks are doing now when they're doing procedures, is pairing those up with things that will increase blood flow, pumps, and mm-hmm. things that you can use to enhance vascularization after the procedure. So there's a lot of confounding variables, things that you might have seen some effect from, whether or not you've done the stem cells. Right. But I noticed a difference from the procedure as a whole, for sure, and I've done it twice now.
Because you interview a lot of these experts on your podcast and because you experiment on yourself, are there any pitfalls that you would warn people about, or things to avoid that they were doing a year or two ago that are now being dropped?
For some time, I was a little bit nervous about, for example, stem cells that are non-autologous, mm-hmm. right? Like umbilical or amniotic. There was some question in my mind about the injection of foreign tissue into the body, a potential antibody response, or the potential for a virus, in protein form. We're discovering a new virus like every several weeks. Who knows, what you might be injecting into your body. But at the same time, I was recently kind of made aware of the fact that there's some pretty intense screening protocols in place, mm-hmm. as far as the actual donors for that, as far as screening different proteins and viral antigens. They're doing a very good job filtering a lot of the umbilical right. and the amniotic. So I'm not as concerned about that, about using non-autologous tissue. The same thing with placental derivatives. I think you get far higher concentrations of your mesenchymal stem cells, your MSCs, when you're using autologous tissue. Mm-hmm. I think it seems to have, for me, having done umbilical and amniotic, and also having done fat, having done bone, and also having done some of the exosomes and culture expanded cells and some of these other offerings, that autologous stem cells still seem to be superior. But I think you can get a lot of good results, and I think there's less risk than I used to think there was from using non-autologous tissue for your stem cells. Right. The other thing, I think a lot of people are under the impression that if they're going to do stem cells and they're older, then maybe they shouldn't use their own stem cells because they're old stem cells. Mm. But as I mentioned earlier, the thing that stem cells do when you get them injected is they're simply acting as signaling molecules. They're enhancing your body's own repair processes. So there would actually not really be much of an issue with someone who's 70 years old going in and getting like a bone marrow concentrate made from their own hip bones and injecting stem cells autologously from their own tissue, because the majority of what the stem cells are doing is they're just signaling the body to heal itself.
You make a good point. I would have thought that older people might do better, but you're right. It's not about how many times they replicate it as a signaling molecule. It might just be the same.
When you're looking at repair and recovery, I think that there's not going to be a big difference between whether you're old or young and using your own stem cells. For the anti-aging effect, and based on the stem cell theory of aging, which is that your own endogenous stem cell collection somehow begins to wane as you age, well, there could be an argument that you would do a better job if you're in it for the anti-aging piece to actually use young stem cells, to either use your own stem cells that were harvested from you when you were younger, and to do IV infusions or joint infusions of those, or to use something else from a younger source, like a non-autologous source, like umbilical or amniotic or placental. But I think if it's just a joint that you're getting injected, for example, I think using your own stem cells, you're going to get a higher concentration in many cases.
In your conversations with people, have you spent any time looking at exosomes? Because they appear to be the new and improved version of this cellular therapy. What have you learned in your process about exosomes?
So the cool thing about exosomes is that they seem to enable a lot of those cell-to-cell signaling pathways, which is what exosomes are. They're just these little vesicles that get released from the cell that act very similarly to say, like free radicals as signaling molecules. And so the idea is that when given along with stem cells, they would upgrade the stem cells, so to speak. They would allow the stem cells to better travel throughout the body to potentially enhance the body's own repair mechanisms in the way that they're supposed to do, to enhance the natural inflammatory response. But with exosomes, you can actually also use those by themselves and get a very similar effect. Probably not as profound as what you'd get by having a lot of your mesenchymal stem cells available at the same time that you have a lot of exosomes available. But I would put exosomes into the same category as like a prolozone therapy or PRP or any other thing that's going to kind of initiate a healthy inflammatory response to heal up a joint. I think that the best way to use them would be in combination with stem cells, but they seem to have a really good effect by themselves as well.
And so have you developed any protocols for yourself to nutritionally support your body when you're getting stem cells? Are there things that people should do?
I absolutely love the idea of going after the low-hanging fruit first before you go after the expensive stem cell injection. So fasting is a wonderful example of something that we know induces an upregulation of stem cell mobilization, an upregulation of the own health of your stem cells, your mesenchymal stem cell availability, just, intermittent fasting, alternate day fasting, a fasting mimicking diet. Any of these things seem to have an effect on the stem cells. That would be, of course, the omission side of nutrition. As far as commission and things that you could actually consume, there's some interesting compounds out there. Colostrum might be able to actually increase your own stem cell availability. Coffee berry fruit extract is another one. Moringa, colostrum, aloe vera extract. There's a lot of these things that seem to have an anti-aging effect by directly acting on stem cells. So, when you're looking at a lot of these things you could put into like your morning smoothie, right? Like a morning anti-aging smoothie. These are things you could easily just like put in a blender with some ice and some bone broth and be drinking nutrients that seem to have an effect as well. And there's also very similar to nutrition, there are what we might call technology or biohacking type of protocols that also have an effect on stem cells. Like we know that the bone marrow, specifically the long bones in the femur, are where a lot of the stem cells are produced or where they're stored. And so there's this protocol called PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. And you can actually do PEMF over the long bones of the femur. And this is something that I was actually advised to do prior to one of my stem cell protocols to actually increase the availability of the stem cells that they were extracting from my body, was to do PEMF on the long bones of my femur. And this is like a 20-minute protocol, and there's a bunch of different PEMF devices out there, but that's another one that seems to have an effect on stem cells.
I've been wondering if before a stem cell procedure, have you ever considered to do a fasting mimicking diet or a 5-day water fast prior to the injection, and then do the refeeding in conjunction with the injection of the stem cells, just to try to set up my body for receiving the stem cells? Have you ever experimented with anything like that?
Anything you can do to reduce inflammation, to improve mitochondrial health, or to reduce glycemic variability, going into any type of stem cell protocol or just as a general health method to increase your own stem cell availability, can be very effective. So, if you're going in for a stem cell protocol, yes, some type of fasting or caloric restriction, and using calorie restriction mimetics, right, like Ceylon cinnamon or apple cider vinegar or curcumin. A lot of these things can help to reduce glycemic variability and also kind of simulate the fasting response. In addition to that, another example would be from a mitochondrial standpoint, grounding or earthing, or like actually getting outside, having your bare feet or your hands in touch with the ground, or touching trees or touching rocks, sunlight exposure, because we know that sunlight is profoundly beneficial for mitochondria and for reducing inflammation.
Right.
good water intake, good mineral intake, even things like cold showers or cryotherapy to reduce inflammation from that standpoint. I think if you're going to pay the money for a stem cell procedure and you want good, healthy, available stem cells, I'd be doing fasting, earthing, grounding, cold, sunlight, movement, throw in some PEMF, throw in some of these nutrients, like moringa and chlorella and coffee berry and aloe vera and a lot of these compounds that can actually move the dial from an internal standpoint. I think that's very smart. Even if you're not getting a stem cell procedure, you're going to feel good doing that.
That's so great. We're interviewing lots of experts, but I really wanted to talk with you because in addition to being very knowledgeable about it, you're also developing a lot of personal experience from the patient side, and so your perspective is really great.
Yeah, well, I love the whole world of anti-aging and longevity as a whole, and just the very simple blood test, right? You can test your telomeres. You can use a service like TeloYears, for example, will give you an analysis of the telomere length on your white blood cells, particularly, which is why it's a controversial test. It's not testing every cell in your body, but it gives you a decent idea. Right. And the number one thing that I've done to move the dial, because I do that test frequently on a quarterly basis, were stem cells. So they definitely have an effect.
Well, while you're here, do you want to explain telomeres to someone as if this was new to them?
Yeah, telomeres, essentially, they're almost like the cap on either of your shoelaces that keep the shoelaces themselves, your DNA from unraveling excessively. So the telomeres are protective elements of the DNA, and the faster the rate at which those telomeres shorten, the faster that you're going to age, or you're going to experience protein damage or DNA damage or inability of the DNA to result in the proper expression of proteins. Right. So the idea is that anything that you can do to decrease the rate at which your telomeres shorten is going to be beneficial from a longevity standpoint. And that would include stem cells, that would include fasting. There are herbal compounds out there like astragalus and rhodiola that also have an effect on telomeres. A lot of the mitochondrial protocols I was talking about, like sunlight and earthing and grounding and water and minerals, all of that seems to have an effect. But fasting and stem cells are pretty high up there when it comes to telomere.
You mentioned PEMF. Talk to me about what it is and how someone can access it.
PEMF is an acronym for Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy. Now, we are, in this day and age, no doubt aware of EMFs, right? We hear about cell phones, and they can be damaging to your body, your Wi-Fi routers, or Bluetooth, or 5G, and those are electromagnetic fields, and PEMFs are also electromagnetic fields. Mm-hmm. The difference is that PEMFs are a very low frequency and long wavelength. We're talking about millions of times lower than what you get from, say, holding a cell phone in your hand. But at the same time, when the body, particularly the cell membranes, are exposed to this frequency, it's very similar to the natural magnetic frequency that the Earth would emit, but you can purchase devices or mats or treatment protocols that you hold up against your skin and that induce the same effect in a localized area, like let's say the long bones of your femur if you were trying to increase your stem cell availability. Well, what happens is you actually get an opening and closing of the cell membrane, you get increase in blood flow, you get decrease in inflammation, and the way that this is happening is there's actually an electromagnetic field being produced by these PEMF devices, but it has a healing response rather than a damaging response because it's such a low frequency and a long wavelength. And so these are things that people are using now for sleep, for decreasing inflammation. They can be used for brain entrainment, meaning that certain frequencies will increase alpha brainwave production, some will increase delta brainwave production. There's some that are being used now for depression and anxiety. So I have a PEMF device literally in my bag back in my hotel room right now that I travel with. I've got another one that I sleep on at home. I've got another big mat device in my gym that I use for recovery sessions and that I get massages on. So it's a very, very kind of cool modality and a good way to use electricity responsibly to heal the body.
Ben, thanks so much for sharing your experience and your thinking, and it's really great to see you again.
Thanks, man.
So what do you think? They definitely broke the mold after they made this guy, right? I just love Ben Greenfield, terrific guy, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that he took the time to sit and talk to us. It was interesting to watch Dr. Sheldon Jordan show up for his interview. Why? Because he walked in with like a cane and kind of hobbling a bit. Why? Because he had a motorcycle accident some weeks before the interview. So this medical doctor, who is a high-level academic, who had a motorcycle accident, came to sit for this interview, but what was amazing was that he used stem cell treatment on himself, and when he talks about how quick his recovery was compared to what it should have been, I think it's pretty compelling information. So enjoy this interview with Dr. Sheldon Jordan. So Dr. Jordan, thanks for sitting with us and having this conversation. I'm looking forward to not only hearing about your knowledge, but you have a little bit of a story to share with us.
I sure do.
Yeah. So let's start though with your background. Can you tell us kind of your academic background and how you got into the subjects you're in now?
Sure. So I went to undergraduate school at Johns Hopkins University, and then I came out to UCLA for an MD PhD program in neurosciences. Went to internship, residency, fellowship, and finally joined the faculty at UCLA, where I've been since 1981. I've been on clinical faculty at UCLA, and I have a private practice in Santa Monica, which has been largely involved in treatment evaluation of nerve injuries and pain management. I became very much interested in ability to do very precise treatments based on imaging guidance. And that's really how I really kind of got into the regenerative field as well, is using ultrasound, CT, MRI data to be very precise where we deliver an injection. That's how I really got into the field. And over the last 10 years, as regenerative medicine has matured, we started out with other kinds of injections like Botox, steroids, that sort of thing. And the field has matured from using platelet concentrates to stem cells and a variety of proteins like plasma enriched for alpha-2 macroglobulin. And more recently, exosomes have become available for clinical trials, and so I've been involved in that as well. Along with this, we've begun to be involved with a number of degenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And obviously in the regenerative field, that's become a very hot topic. And again, with those, the guided imagery to find out exactly where to target the delivery of exosomes and stem cells has been a big part of the research that I'm doing at UCLA in private practice.
So would you say, since you're involved in pain management to a large degree, has the state of the art changed in the past 10 to 15 years as far as pain management is concerned?
Well, tremendously. Initially, we had very simple types of injections like cortisone and local anesthetics. And then we got involved in biologics like using botulinum toxin. But the regenerative field really started about 10 years ago. And for musculoskeletal injuries, tendon injuries, joint degenerations, the platelet and stem cells had a big application. However, it's the advent of some of these newer types of injections, we can start to go after nerve injury. And that's one of my areas of expertise, is taking things like carpal tunnel syndrome, where there's an injury to the nerve going through the wrist, or a brachial plexus, where there's a bundle of nerves that can be injured, for example, with motorcycle accidents. And so my area of expertise is to use live ultrasound guidance to get injections very precisely in and around the nerve where the injury is occurring, so we can get it to regenerate.
Is that, so is the specificity of the injection site have a massive impact on outcome?
I believe so. Obviously you have to choose the right type of injection to give in terms of the product that you're using. But I think you can really help the outcome if you can be very precise in putting it exactly where it's needed. And I think a lot of people will use sort of non-personalized approaches where they just sort of inject somewhere and hope that the medicine gets to the right place. But I think you're one step ahead of the game if you can be very precise in finding out where the injury is and then injecting directly in the right place so the medication doesn't have to diffuse to the right place, but it's already starting in a good target.
So it's interesting because it sounds like also it's a little bit of a shift, saying that maybe the older forms of injection therapy for pain was more about maybe masking the pain or kind of letting the body not experience it, as compared to the newer forms that you're describing seem to be more like they're regenerating or they're healing the problem and therefore the pain goes away.
Yes, so with the advent of platelets, platelets are packaged with growth factors. And the growth factors have the ability to actually get tissues to regenerate. So if you have a torn tendon, or if you have some area of cartilage breakdown in a joint, there's a chance that you can actually get a regenerative process rather than just covering up the inflammatory process and hoping that the pain is better for a short time. Here what you're trying to do is actually getting something to regenerate so you don't necessarily have to repeat it.
Yeah, so that's got to be kind of exciting.
It was a big breakthrough. Platelets were the first things that we had, and then stem cells when there's more of an injury and you need to get more of a regrowth. But we never actually had anything that was applicable to nerve injury until we had these plasma concentrates that are enriched for certain proteins like alpha-2 macroglobulin, which is a body's natural anti-inflammation protein, and we can inject those right around inside the nerve sleeve and get a nerve to improve. Now we also have exosomes. We've been injecting those and getting some nerve tissue to potentially regenerate.
I'm hearing a lot of excitement around exosomes. Do you share that excitement?
I do, but I think it's very early in the information cycle, and I think we need to do a lot more research, and I think it needs to be done in a way where we're getting something based on good science. I don't think I would recommend exosome as a proven therapy for just about anything right now, but there's definitely a lot of promise there, and I see it as one significant form of future therapy, and I think it has applications potentially to a lot of different areas, regenerative techniques for things like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease, regenerative techniques for nerve injuries like we're discussing now. I think that's going to take off in the next several years. But of course, we have to go through the regulatory processes, and we have to make sure we're doing everything in a way that there's proper consenting and oversight, and that's what we're trying to do.
And can you describe what an exosome is?
Well, an exosome is actually something that you can find in just about every cell of the body. The exosome is sort of a little packet that's filled with a variety of proteins and RNA. So an RNA has sort of a translation of the genetic code in a more simple molecule. And under certain conditions, cells will package and repackage different proteins and different RNA depending on how stressed out they may be, or whether they're in a growth phase or a quiet phase. And then these exosomes are released into the circulation and into the body, so cells talk to one another by way of the information that they send in these little packages. So if there's an inflammation in one part of the body, or a cancer that's growing in one part of the body, the cells that are exposed to that challenge will actually package the information into the exosomes and then send it out to other cells of the body. So the other cells of the body can sort of be in a get ready zone. So should that challenge spread to them, they have some sort of change in their metabolism that makes them more suitable to the challenge.
Wow. So these are kind of like alerts that the body sends out in these little packets.
Yes.
So how are they harvested when they're used in therapy?
Well, you can get them as a secretions that are released from cells, for example, in a culture medium, or in a tissue preparation, they can be released, and they're so small that they have to be ultracentrifuged. So first, you can spin and get rid of the major cellular elements, white cells, red cells, other tissue cells. But the exosomes are so tiny, they'll stay in solution until you really very, very rapidly spin them. So in a sort of final spin in multiple steps, you can get a concentrated solution. So in the case of 1 cubic centimeter, you can get 5 billion exosomes.
Wow.
So they're that small. They run between 50 and 150 nanometers, which is a very small fraction of what the parent cell might look like.
Wow. So now let's talk about you a little bit, because you just recently had your own
I did.
exosome experience. So tell us what happened.
Yes, it was not something that I was originally planning for, but I was motorcycling to work one day, and beautiful day, but there's a little morning mist, and some little old guy was stepping into the crosswalk, and I suddenly hit the brakes. And for those who drive motorcycles, they'll know that this is a basic error that you should never make, is I squeezed the brakes a little too hard. the brakes locked up, and I immediately went into a skid. Now, fortunately, I was wearing body armor and a full helmet, but the asphalt basically abraded off the whole right side of my helmet. My shoulder went along the ground as the bike fell on top of me, and I skidded 20 yards.
Wow.
And now I've taken spills before on motorcycles and bicycles, so I figured, okay, I'm just going to dust myself off and go to work, right? So I try to get up, and I'm looking at my left foot, and that seems to be moving, and my right foot is sort of like a rag doll. So I realized, okay, I'm going to go to the emergency room first. I'm not going to go directly to work. So it turns out, as I got to the emergency room, I had 11 broken ribs.
Wow.
I lacerated my liver, my kidney, and my adrenal gland. I was bleeding internally, so I lost a third of my blood internally.
Wow.
Of course, I had that fracture of the ankle, and I had a comminuted fracture of my clavicle. So I had severe injuries, and I guess if I had slammed into any parked cars, I probably would have been dead. But fortunately, I got to the emergency room, and I was stabilized. I went through 6 hours of surgery to pin everything together, and eventually the bleeding stopped. And 3 days after being released from the hospital and having 6 hours of surgery, I took 25 billion exosomes intravenously. So
Self-administered?
self-administered IV. Yeah, I didn't start the IV; my nurse did that.
Okay.
But I did help her find the vein. But anyway, so for anyone who's had cracked ribs, that's the worst part.
Yeah.
So the ankle was pinned, my collarbone was pinned, the internal bleeding, that kind of hurt a little bit, but not much. But ribs, 11 cracked ribs, you can't breathe, you can't move, the bumps in the road when you're in a car hurt, you can't laugh. So for 2 weeks, I had that sort of pain. But after 2 weeks of having had these exosomes, all the pain went away. Now, that's unheard of. In a 60-something-year-old guy, to have rib fracture pain go away in 2 weeks is just unheard of.
Wow.
So the surgeon also did a follow-up exam about a week after the surgery, and he was looking at all my wounds. They'd all healed up. So he took out my stitches in the first week. Again, that's kind of unheard of. They usually have the stitches in for a couple of weeks, because it takes that long for the skin wounds to heal, but the skin wounds are basically healed. And now that it's 4 weeks later, oh, by the way, I've been working full-time the whole time.
Really?
Didn't take off any days. I've been doing surgery.
Wow.
So the exosomes really helped me tolerate that sort of a work schedule. And I might see 25 patients in a day, and I might do 6 to 8 surgeries in a day. So it's a busy schedule. So I was able to endure that. But the other thing is I just did my x-rays, so 4 weeks later, just did my x-rays, and you can't even see a fracture line in the ankle. It's completely healed. And now the ribs, you can see that there's still some fractures there, but there's callus that's growing all around it and healing the fractures. So just in 2 weeks, which is things were starting to heal. And now with x-rays, you can see that the fracture lines are starting to disappear.
Wow. So what's interesting, you just basically did a high dose, I guess, systemic version of the exosomes, right? So
Correct.
So like it wasn't like you targeted the injuries, you just introduced them into the bloodstream and then let them circulate and do their thing.
Well, here's the cool thing about exosomes is that they have a capability of actually homing. So they respond to an injury signal, and they find their way where that injury signal was being created, and they stick there, and they release their growth factors and their microRNA to affect all the changes on the injured cells to start a repair process. So believe me, I had a lot of injury signal coming from 11 broken ribs, a broken ankle, and a clavicle.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, I guess is there kind of a generic biocompatibility, meaning, these aren't your exosomes, obviously, these are from, I imagine, a younger person?
I don't think you want my exosomes. So I'm a 60-year-old guy, so my exosomes probably don't have the pro-growth anti-inflammatory qualities packaged into them like you would prefer in a situation like this. So one of the better sources would be get it from a full-term baby. So these particular exosomes are derived from an umbilical cord full-term baby, and they're processed from that.
Right, and now you're getting fresh ones. It's sort of a fountain of youth, I guess, in a sense, right? Saying, hey, we got these very young cells going into this older body, and they're going to perform like they did when I was very little.
And they did. And here's the crazy thing is that a couple of weeks after these exosomes, people are actually telling me I look younger. Now, that was not the purpose of this.
But it's not a bad side effect either, right?
Right.
Wow. And did you notice any other changes? You look younger, your bones are healing. Did you feel any, like energy or any shift in that way, or sleep better?
Well, you can imagine the first 2 weeks with the ongoing pain. I had problems with sleep.
Yeah.
But I've been able to sleep. The pain's gone. My energy level is very good. I could probably walk if I could get this boot off, but I got to get my surgeon to give me the okay on that. He just got the X-rays I think today, so if he tells me I can take off this boot, I'm walking.
Wow.
And then I'm going to race you down the hallway.
That's good, as long as it's not on a motorcycle. So is this going to impact your thinking and protocols? As far as now you became the patient. So
Right.
I don't know if I'll call this a happy accident, but it was an instructive one.
Sure.
That you got to say firsthand. This is because you seem even surprised by the massive effects that this had.
I was surprised. I think that every once in a while, as new developments come through in medicine, you see something you've never seen before. And to see this in myself, and I've certainly taken care of plenty of people who have rib fracture pain, which can last for months.
Right.
And as a pain management doctor, I'm very used to going in and doing special kinds of nerve blocks to get rid of that. I never imagined that in 2 weeks I would have complete pain relief.
So now, because this kind of gets into maybe an investigational dimension of the use of exosomes. So if now somebody says, hey, that's me too, I've got this problem, are you permitted to administer this as a part of your clinical practice?
That's a good question, and I think it deserves a little bit of a nuanced response. The exosomes are something that ultimately will need to be adjudicated by the FDA. And I think it needs to go through a rigorous study process, for sure. Right now, the particular company that I use is marking this only as a topical agent. So to some extent, it's the doctor's discretion to use this in an unlabeled fashion.
Right.
So then it falls into the realm of the practice of medicine. And the Federation of State Medical Boards have actually published a 10-point guideline that gives doctors some guidance and limitations in terms of using regenerative products in this fashion. And basically, some of the guidelines are worth stating. First of all, this is not considered first-line treatment. This is something that you consider when there's no other good option. So, for example, there's no good option for treating fractured ribs. They don't even bind them anymore. You can just use drugs.
Right.
So that's the first thing, is that there's no other recognized conventional treatment that you might consider. Number two, there has to be a discussion between the treating physician and the patient, which includes certain elements, including the fact that there's no proof that exosomes actually do anything.
Right.
And that it's new, it has promise, but there's no proof. And the patient has to realize that there's no proof. On the other hand, the patient also has to understand that this may be the only thing that may be used in their end stage or terminal or otherwise untreatable condition.
Right.
One
So
has
it's kind of an informed consent, so that they say, hey, if you're spending money on this, just understand this is kind
Well,
of...
there also has to be truthfulness in marketing. I don't think you can, on your website or in discussion with the patient, you can't promise them that this is a treatment for anything.
Right.
You can say that I've had experience, here's my experience, this is how other patients have done, and to the extent that this is subjected to higher level research, that's the way that this whole field should go. But I think based on my own experience, based on the experience with patients that I've treated, there is certainly a lot of interest generated by this, and I think that we should get to do some serious science and get this through all the right regulatory pathways so this becomes available for use. And I can think that in an emergency room situation, people in the next few years, just like I was a patient in an emergency room situation, they'll be getting exosomes, and people will be healing faster.
Do you think that there's a benefit, or I know you'd be speculating at this point, but between having them introduced and proximity to the injury, meaning if you do it like right away versus some days or weeks later, that the effect is going to be more robust?
I believe so. I think the way that I conceive of this is that when there's an injury signal that's released by that tissue locally. Mm-hmm. So as the stem cells or exosomes are circulating around the system, they have a receptor for that signal, and they'll stick there. Mm-hmm. So they actually get a homing mechanism. So once they get there, they release their growth factors, they release their microRNA, they do all the things that they can do to make that injured tissue have a good response.
So now, I guess, so you now are using it in your practice with, I guess, the informed consent that you referred to.
And we're initiating some research because I think ultimately it should be subject to rigorous research.
Yeah. So, and are you going to be working on that at UCLA?
Well, I'm clinical faculty at UCLA, and I have a private clinic where we're going to be doing this, although UCLA is also doing some projects that we collaborate on, yes.
Right. So your relationship with the university, helps to maybe get this work done.
Yes.
And what do you think the timeline will be before maybe there's some research done, it's submitted to the FDA, they say, okay, now we have a new intended use, that we can approve. What's the time frame for something like that?
Well, you always have to be cautious about predicting how fast the FDA can work with things, but the FDA has announced that they have a fast track available for these regenerative products.
Oh, wow.
So they call it an RMAT, and I forget exactly what that stands for, but for some of these regenerative techniques where there is no recognized existing treatment, for example, with some of these degenerative conditions or other conditions where there's just nothing that else can be done.
Right.
If someone can demonstrate safety and there's some initial testing that shows that's potentially efficacious, I think the intention of the FDA is to fast track these things so they can become available in a small number of years rather than many years and many millions of dollars later.
And I imagine that, at least at this point, do you suspect any adverse effects of using exosomes?
There have been many thousands of exosome experiences. Through the company whose products I use, have had thousands of doses administered, and there have not been any serious reported conditions that they're aware of. And in my experience, I've treated somewhere between 50 and 100 patients, and there haven't been any serious side effects that I could attribute to the exosomes themselves.
So this is really, I think, going to be terrific news for people who are searching for solutions, saying there's something out there on the horizon, maybe that can help them with some chronic pain or even acute pain conditions.
Yeah, I think nerve injuries that haven't responded, I'm interested to see how some of these degenerative conditions will go, Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease and some of these other conditions. I think there'll have to be some special targeting techniques used for some of these conditions like Alzheimer's disease. I think if one were to give it intravenously, we have to make sure that the exosomes, or if you're going to use stem cells, are going to go to the parts of the brain that are relevant to that particular condition. So, for example, in Alzheimer's disease, memory loss is a big problem.
Right.
So we know that memory is typically something that is in the purview of a tissue called the hippocampus, which is in the temples. And I think where the big breakthroughs are going to, and this is something that we're working on with UCLA, one of the big breakthroughs is that we can use ultrasound energy in a very focused way to increase the delivery of intravenously administered exosomes and stem cells. So you can open up the blood-brain barrier, you can increase perfusion, perhaps you can increase that inflammatory signal that makes the stem cells and the exosomes want to go to a particular place. Right. So we can focus in on the hippocampus, turn that on for the exosomes, get the exosomes to go there in a targeted fashion. And I think that's where the big breakthrough is going to come.
Yeah, it's brilliant. To me, it's fascinating, using varying technologies in conjunction with each other to create an effect. especially because they're not noxious in nature. You know, ultrasound isn't going to hurt you. You know, exosomes aren't going to hurt you. But the idea is saying, hey, we're gonna light this up a little bit with some sound therapy, and then it's going to track the exosomes, and all this wonderful stuff's going to happen. I think it's a quantum leap forward in
Well, the other interesting piece here is we can do this in a very individualized fashion. So using advanced MRI techniques, so-called functional MRI scans, we can find out exactly which part of the brain is affected in a particular patient, and we can use that to actually target our focused ultrasound and therefore make sure the exosomes get exactly where we want to go. So there's no guesswork involved.
Yeah, so that's you're gonna have a lot of fun in the next few years, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and share your expertise and your personal experience with us. So very enlightening, and I wish you great success in your continued efforts.
All right, thanks a lot.
I always like it when the doctors many times are also the patients, and you get both perspectives from the same person. I hope you got as much out of that interview as I did. Here we have a block of content for you with patients and procedures. So I'm just gonna say the procedures might be disturbing for some people, for others, no problem. Just give me a little heads up on that. And of course, I love talking to patients and finding out what their stories are and how these types of things that we've been talking about abstractly affect real people. Alan, thanks for taking some time to sit and talk with us. Let's talk about your health journey. What did you go through in your personal life that kind of led you to where you are actually today?
Well, first of all, I'm a real estate developer for 50 years, and about 5 years ago, I had stage 4 cancer in my throat.
Wow.
And, the typical emotional things you go through, well, I don't want to do chemo, I don't want to do radiation. And so for a couple months, I tried to go on a diet, take vitamins, do all sorts of things. But basically in my mind, I thought, this is it, started to get my affairs in order and such. My wife finally talked me into going to the oncologist and do the procedures that I needed to do. And after 39 radiations and 3 chemos, they said that they got it. And I feel great, so I assume they did. But that kind of changed my mindset on life. And we've had, great success in real estate. But so about 2 years ago, a friend actually introduced me to a person who was in that business, who actually started a stem cell company. And he needed an investor, and I offered to be an investor, and it all evolved. And so now I've been working with people all over the world, and we have friends that actually started as a real estate partners 20 years ago, and I never realized that he had a medical background. And then his fiance is in Germany, and she's a Harvard doctor, and she's got a lot of businesses there. And so I introduced them to the people that I met, and it was like instant excitement. Even though these 2 people are traveling the world, they're busy doing every other type of business. They totally locked in on stem cells because they hadn't caught up. Europe is, I think, behind the United States in stem cells. And so 2 years later is now. We've just set up some really exciting things. We are planning to bring a lot of the stem cell technology that we found here into Europe. And frankly, that helps us find out things that we normally wouldn't find out, because a lot of these companies want to get to Europe. And we, as a group, become a vehicle for that. So we're pretty excited about that.
So did you think 5 years ago you might end up in this kind of a business, or is this like
not in a million years?
Yeah.
Not in a million years. No, just I'll be 70 next month, and between that shock and the shock of having the medical problem a few years ago and going through that it took me about 2.5, 3 years to actually forget about it. But I really never forget about it.
Right.
But, I feel good. I watched my diet. I lost 50 pounds,
Wow.
which was you go through radiation, I couldn't eat for months. So
Right.
it was a pretty quick diet, but it was, I didn't go back.
Right.
Just because.
What was it about stem cells that got you interested to say that you wanted to kind of become an investor, get deeper into this?
Well, just the story, just the historic stories that from people that had experienced it. A fellow that got me into it initially. He had a lot of physical problems with his legs. He actually had braces on his legs, and he said after stem cell treatments, he no longer had braces after many, many years. And it was from a car accident that he was in. So, but that wasn't just him. It was so many other people that I've met that talked about, the miraculous things. Then you go online and, I guess there was a lady and they went to Stanford and she was young and she had a stroke and they, did stem cell injections, and there's just some miraculous stories about the success of stem cells. So I've tried. I've had IV stem cells, my wife and I, and I play tennis, and so I had a hyperextended thumb. I had my toes were jammed from playing tennis and had a lot of pain. I got some stem cell treatments, and they're both no longer painful. So I thought that was nice, and I went, now I just want to get everything else inside of me, improve, because you never know. I felt great until the day I went to the ENT, and he told me that I had stage 4.
Wow.
So I don't want another day. I'd rather try to be
ahead of it.
Be ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, would you say that life extension now becomes a goal of yours as compared to just dealing with an illness?
Quality life,
Yeah.
and then life extension. Yeah, I'm really enjoying myself.
Yeah.
You work hard all your life, and I see so many people that are my age that are suffering the rest of their lives, and I watched my parents basically for 10, 15 years sit in a couch and be in pain, and their life. And I think the less you move, and I think it accelerates your demise. So.
No doubt. There's a regulatory environment around stem cells in the U.S. and how they're being used in the clinics that are sprouting up everywhere, et cetera. And there's concerns. A lot of these places think that it's just a matter of time for the FDA is going to say we're not going to allow this anymore. You have to go through the normal pathways in the FDA in order to go out to market with this. What do you see? Because now you're an investor, not just a patient, but you're an investor. And so what is your vision? What do you think is going to happen? And I know you said you're going to Europe, but where do you think this is all leading?
Well, we have also another business associate in Mexico City that has a license for stem cells down there that's pretty much a license to do expanded stem cells. And Panama, there was a doctor in Panama that's doing great things there, but we don't have it here yet. And what we have is what I call stem cell light. And so we've been prepared because I didn't want to have stem cell light. I wanted the full stem cells, but I didn't really want to travel to Mexico City or Panama to do it. So my goal was to figure out how to get it done here. So that whole evolution is what got me to this point, but in that process, I have the contacts, and the closest areas on the West Coast is just south of San Diego. We're in California. We're in Mexico, and then Cancun isn't that far from Florida.
Right.
So we have kind of close connection locations and a license to do stem cell and exosome treatments. Right now, it's possible to do what people seem to be satisfied doing, but if that closes down, then we're set to do that. We've also looked into chartering yachts and taking them 13 miles into international waters and to do the treatments and so on. So we've had our lawyers look into all those different things. It's no doubt we're going to have clinics all over Europe, but we still have just as big a it's not FDA, but we have that same challenge over there. Mexico, it's legal, and the science has been going on there for at least a decade. So that's our plan to be there, and we're planning also to get through all the regulatory process here and there. I'm sure in a matter of a few years it'll all get straightened out, but it would be terrible to just close the doors on all these clinics that have emerged and all the things that people are enjoying, which to me is the new medicine, and to have that go away.
Yeah, because with what you're describing, then it becomes available to the wealthy, but people who don't have the means can't travel to international destinations, get the treatment. It's not available, near them, and that would be a shame. One of the things that I approach this whole project now, and I'm deep into it. A bit skeptical. I don't know if there's much science here. I don't know if the data is really there. These people are charging. It's not inexpensive to get this kind of work done.
No insurance.
And there's no insurance coverage for it. So how valid could it be? After interviewing all the academicians, all the clinicians, and especially the patients, and listening to story after story after story.
Right.
The prospect of this not becoming available, it seems like a horrible injustice, quite frankly, because it's not like they're at risk. It's not like it's a very risky thing. The risk really is maybe the investment is the biggest aspect of the risk, but the potential upside for so many of these people is pretty significant.
It sure is, and I think FDA would be happy to get past this period and have everything acceptable, and everybody's under that FDA umbrella, whatever it takes. But it's a process.
Well, what's interesting, again, because you bring a fresh context, is you're experienced businessman, you're now an investor in this, and you see the degree of uncertainty on the regulatory side of this world. And I guess in real estate, there's zoning and all kinds of other things. So you're probably used to navigating regulatory things, to get a business into existence. What I find fascinating, the first person I heard talk about, the potential for saying, hey, we got yachts, we go offshore 13 miles, and basically in international waters, we can do pretty much whatever we want.
That's what the attorneys say. So it seems to be the case. So sometimes I could go further and be in another country, and they have laws against it. So
you have to be in that one space.
Right, that one space.
And then, but is there an issue on the transaction side as far as okay, so is this being transacted in American banks, and it's for something that's not permissible, or?
Well, again, that's why you have attorneys to make sure it's done right. It's not these days with e-commerce. It's not difficult to have attorneys plan it out and make sure that you're covering all the laws. I mean, we go right to the FDA and tell them what we're doing. We're not hiding anything.
Right.
We want to be FDA's best friend because we want to be the conduit to getting as much approved with the FDA as we can. But if they get to a point, as we know in big government, that they have to shut things down for a year or two while they figure it out, we don't want to stop people. I don't want to stop being able to get treated.
And this is what's interesting, because your drive is accessibility, right? I mean, you obviously want it to be a profitable business, but it sounds like you're really kind of setting up saying, if any number of things happen, we still have a way to be accessible to people to provide the service, and you kind of
and other people are. Other people have done that. I think Grand Caymans, I understand there's places to go down there. Again, my first choice is to have a clinic right here in Florida where I live. Maybe I'm lazy, I don't know, but so we're looking at the easiest, and because people, at least my friends that want this done, they're too busy to take a vacation to have it done. They want to have it done in the quickest possible way. So that's why we did the thought process of the yachts, and we've looked in planes. And so we're going to be prepared to do what we have to do. Maybe it won't happen, but we're prepared.
You got contingency in place.
Yes.
Do you think there might be a problem on the supply side, or is that not an issue? Like the people who actually develop the cells, that distribute to the centers or the clinics, is the FDA, because they follow FDA protocol now as far as their manufacturing practices, the good manufacturing practices. So, so do you think there might be a risk of the FDA shutting them down, or creating them is no big deal? We just don't want people injecting them.
Well, I really can't answer that. If there's going to be a way if they want to shut down, they can shut anybody down they want to. But we've already looked at other locations offshore. We're certainly going to be producing in Europe. There's no reason we can't produce in Mexico. We have clinics in our partnerships. We have clinics down in Mexico. We were looking at San Juan, Puerto Rico, even though it's part of the United States. They have different criteria that could or may or may not work under that
That's interesting.
circumstance.
Yeah, because they're not a state, but they are protectorate, I guess. So that would
Yeah,
be
they
interesting.
have some unique approvals that we don't enjoy here. So
That's very interesting and easy to travel to with an American
Yeah,
passport.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Wow, that's very interesting. And for your own experience, you've already described, basically from a lifestyle perspective, some of the things, playing tennis and some of the experiences you're having in your body, and seeing that there was a, beneficial response to getting stem cells. How often are you going for stem cells, or?
Well, now that I have what I seemingly have better access to the supply, which has been the evolution over a 2-year period to get more invested time-wise and money-wise, and I've met enough people that now my access to it is more convenient for me. And so I look to my Harvard doctor friends, I look to other people that have been in the business, and I listen to their counsel, and if they told me I had to take it once a month, I'd take it once a month. But I'm not sure what they're going to tell me yet. So, but today's a big day for me. I've been waiting 2 years for this.
Oh, well, okay, so the treatment you're going to be getting today, so can you describe what you're going to get today?
Well, I'm going to get exosomes, and it's an IV. My wife and I are going to get it. And it's in the multi-billions. And I was working to get I was going to go to Mexico City and get several 100 million stem cells, which was something you couldn't do here.
Right.
And you still can't do that here. And so this is a lot shorter trip than going to Mexico City.
Yeah, and I think they said it's the concentration of exosomes in a unit or dose is 10 billion. So
Yes.
yeah, so it's a lot higher. And so I guess in some respects, more is better. And
I think so.
I imagine the quality of them. There's other factors, but so
I met the chemist that,
yeah.
that produced this product, and we're hoping that we're going to be partners with them in Europe. And so.
And are you
I
doing
was
it
so
just through an
impressed.
IV,
An
just a
IV,
push?
right.
Okay, terrific. Well, this is a big day for you then.
Yeah, I expect to be 50 tomorrow.
Well, I wish that for you.
Thank you.
Well, anyway, thank you for taking some time out from your day to do this and to talk about maybe the business side of this and what might be coming down the road. And I certainly wish you great success with the venture.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Hi, I'm Sue.
Alan.
I'm going to be your nurse today. We're going to do a 10 pass, which is an ozone therapy, and also some laser therapy to potentiate and work a little different ways on cells that we don't like to have in our body. All right, I'm going to take a look and see what we have. Do you have any questions?
No, just make me
Okay.
under.
All right, I can do that. Maybe. All right, make a fist.
It's a good one, isn't it?
It's a roller. Okay. But I think I can get that. So I'm going to put in a pretty good sized catheter.
Do I have
In
to
a
look?
big... No, I'm not going to look either. No, we'll both close our eyes. We'll be good. No problem. I do plenty of these, so we'll see. But
You're the stick lady.
yeah. So I'm going to just cleanse it with some ChloraPrep. And the minute you feel the stick, you can just open your hand gently, okay?
Glad it's a new one.
Oh yeah, you win every time. I make money. I bought stock. Okay, here we go. You can look if you want. That's it. Open your hand.
Glad you did this before.
Just one, yeah. One time, yeah, your wife. Yeah. And I closed my eyes, like I said. Yeah, and I do a lot of these. It's definitely an art. But anybody can get a big one. It's the little ones I like. Okay, so here we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hook it up to this machine, which is our ozone machine. And what it's going to do, you might feel it, is pull your blood out and into the
All of
ice set. Only 180 cc's, and you have 6,000 cc's or mLs in your body.
Okay.
So it's less than even a unit of blood. And I'm going to give it back to you. It's not like I'm going to keep it.
I've been told I have extra.
Oh, you're an extra. Oh, okay. All right. So do they ask you to donate blood periodically?
Yeah.
I mean, to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think I gave blood about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. A lot of people have that. A lot of people have that. And all you have to do is give up some blood and it makes you feel better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I get a free blanket sometimes. You know, there's all sorts of
And maybe a little juice.
And they call me all the time. They say, "We want your blood. Come back."
All right. So I'm just going to secure this. All right, so now it's going up into the eye set. And what blood does well is if I keep it moving and I give it a little heparin.
It's like port wine.
Yeah, it's good. So I'm going to give it 2 cc's of heparin. And that's what we're going to use for the whole procedure. And we're going to twirl it. Okay. So it looks good. And then what the doctors also asked is that we use the Lumistem. I can pull up this just a little bit. Just move your, yeah, get perfect. I don't want you leaning. So we'll get the Lumistem, which will light up and kill other things. Okay?
For the bad things. Right?
Bad. All the bad stuff. So
I like
I'm
to
gonna,
keep the good stuff.
yeah, the good stuff we're gonna keep. So I'm gonna let this fill up. And then when we get to the top, I'm gonna give it back to you. And then after that, I'll hook up the other part.
Thank you.
How's that feel, okay?
No problem.
All right, very good. All right. All right, so this is almost to the top. This has the heparin in it, so now the heparin's going to go to you, and what happens is I call it opening up, because it's going to thin everybody down.
Will this
And
make
it'll
me smarter?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I have documentation for that somewhere. I don't know where. And some can feel it and some can't.
After the fact, you mean?
Like now.
Oh, no,
Can you
no.
feel it going in?
I feel
Now.
a coolness. That's,
Okay.
Yeah.
And here's another thing, because there's some people can taste the heparin.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good. So you said it's a 10 pass.
So we're going to do this 10 times.
Okay.
So this is one.
I guess.
So it takes anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, depending on, sometimes it's like an hour and a half if they have a very small vein. But you have a nice vein, and so it tends to move a little bit faster, just because of the size of the vessel.
And all you have to do is turn a switch one way or the other.
Yep, and then lock it.
Right.
So what I want to do is put this in for the Lumistem, which will give more killing power.
Thanks so much for being here. Tell me about yourself and what you do professionally.
I'm a retired civil engineer, but I still work. So now I trade that in for lobbying and consulting for developers in Las Vegas.
So what brought you here to this clinic?
So long road, grow up with small injuries, just live with the injuries until at some point you think that maybe something can happen. So I was doing an intense exercise program, and I was doing really well, and then my right shoulder gave out one day, and I thought, oh, okay, so there's something more serious going on than just soreness. First I went to a physical therapist. He kind of said, yeah, it's a little messed up. Let's give it a few days and see what's going on and give it some rest. We did that, and then he had me do motions, and he said, yeah, there's something bigger going on here. So I scheduled an appointment for an orthopedic surgeon, because that's what you do, that's what he says. So I went down and talked to him, and it was good. He said, well, everybody, I saw 3 different physical therapists and 1 orthopedic surgeon, talked to a bunch of people because my pain was consistent with a lot of people. And he said, you can do an MRI, but he did the x-rays, and then he had me try to move in a bunch of different positions. And he is the orthopedic surgeon for a BYU football team, so he'd been doing things for a long time. And he said, yeah, you have rotator cuff issues. He said, good news and bad news. He says, we can fix, okay, what you have. What you have in both shoulders is some arthritis. And then you have, your labrum seems to be okay because of the movements you can do. You definitely got issues with your rotator cuff. And I had both, I don't know what you call them, but the tendons for the upper bicep, upper tendon on the outside here on both shoulders, they were tore or damaged or overstressed. So he said, you did a great job, and I did both shoulders. And he says, probably been a long, long time of work, because he just asked me my brief history, work history and whatever. And
Right.
so he said, that's the bad news. The good news is today I can give you a shot in your shoulder, help it feel a little bit better. Obviously, you shouldn't be doing something that hurts, and we can schedule surgery. So I asked him about the surgery and what it would take and what it would do, and he said, you can do surgery. It's going to be about 18 months or to 2 years, because you're going to have to do your first surgery, do all your physical therapy, make sure that's all healed, and then we can schedule for the second one. So since I travel every week, I thought, all right. And then it was 0 lifting. So he's saying all the things that I need to get better, but all the things that I can't deal with right now. I have luggage, I have briefcase, I have things. Travel on an airplane is critical. I just looked at that. I don't have 9 months, let alone 18 months to 24 months, where the big part of that is non-functioning. It'd drive me crazy, and I can't do it. And he said, well, just deal with the pain, as long as you can, and then when you can't take it anymore, just come and see me. So I laughed and thought, okay, I'm just gonna have to deal with this.
Right.
So for several months after that, I just tried my remedies, saw the physical therapist, did what they could. I did my exercise routines. I just backed off of certain things. The orthopedic surgeon did say there are some things you absolutely should never do again, and things that you can do, whatever. So I started going through that. It just got to the point where that lack of sleep and constant pain, and I mean constant pain. It's like 24/7 pain, not just irritation, just pain. So on a different track, my wife has a friend that had gone through a whole lot of health issues, and I think she went to an East-West seminar about stem cells, whatever, and so they were talking, and Kathy was telling her about my pain, and I have to tell you, my first thought was like, yeah, they said stem cells, yeah, okay, whatever, I've heard of stem cells, I think, for 30 seconds, 15 years ago or whatever, and I just remember it was a big controversy, and I thought, why would I go and do something like that? It just doesn't seem like it would do anything, She went to this seminar and brought back some information, and then so I read the book on stem cell research, and then some articles, talked to more people. I thought, okay, well, let's go talk with them and see. We scheduled an appointment, East West Health, and it was Aaron and Dr. Lawrence, and so they kind of went through what stem cells are, what they do, and what the success is, because that was my big concern too, is now I can go to the doctor and get fixed. There's a difference between fixed and healed. I prefer to get healed. My body wasn't healing anymore. It just wasn't going to do it. And the fixing is everybody I know, most everybody I know with rotator cuff issues, whatever, everybody just gets the surgery, and they just get better, but never whole. And Dr. Lawrence made me do the same motions that others did. So, if I could move my shoulder and how much, and those things. So he says, yeah, we can fix you. It was interesting. It was more simplistic than I thought it'd be. It's like, what do you do? And he told me it's just shots. And I thought, it's only shots. Interesting. And I said, so what do you do? He says, well, we do the shots, schedule, you do the shots, and then you start your physical therapy and keep doing what you can do, don't do what you can't do, and let the physical therapist kind of understand what's going on and work with you so you can get the recovery process back, and then give it time. And so there was some real specifics that they said that are very, very important. Eating healthy, keeping it hot but not too hot, the way I say it. They want heat on the stem cells, so they are encouraged to do whatever they do. No cold, no aspirin, no any of that kind of stuff. So I thought, okay, fine. So I did the shots. We did both shoulders, 4 shots in each shoulders, 5 units. And then I did it. It was easy. Needles are small and easy, whatever. And he says, don't get anxious. This will take time. You're not going to walk out of here and be perfect. It's going to take time. And normally 6 to 9 months, they'll grow for 9 months and do their stuff. If you'll follow that, then you're going to give the best chance possible, keep the stem cells going, and so on and so forth. I said, okay, fine. So I did the shots, and I left, and it was in July, beginning of July. I thought, great, I can deal with this. And then July was a hard month. It was a hard month because he was right. I didn't go home that day and sleep through the night that night. I had heating pads on. My body knew something was going on, and so I had the heating pads going all the time. All I wanted to do was rest. I did exercise routines. I did PT stuff, but we didn't know exactly how much to do, not do. It's kind of trial and error. So we did that for a long time, and it took me through the end of July, first part of August to kind of get that dialed in as what I could do, which wasn't too much. Right. And then August was not as rough, but still rough because the body's still trying to repair itself or heal, whatever. And then, very interesting, 3 months within a couple of days when I had the shots, I slept for the first time all night. And it was magical. I slept that night, and I woke up and I just said, wow, I just slept all night long. It's like, that's what normal people do, they sleep. But I hadn't slept for such a long time. I thought, wow, so something is going on. So then movement started. My ability to move, my shoulders and my arms increased a little bit from that time on, over time. So I gave myself, I said, okay, I wasn't expecting that at 3 months, but it was great. And when you have something like that, you just want to go more. So I thought, great, come December, which would be 6 months, I said, let's really see what's going on here. And I tell you, the improvements from 3 to 6 months were incredible. They're still healing. In December, after about 6 months, I would say that my left shoulder, which wasn't as damaged as my right, was probably 70-75% better. It's hard. It's just my gauging or whatever. And my right shoulder was improving, a little bit behind, but maybe 65-70%. But there was so much freedom with that. It was incredible. And today, I tell you, my shoulder, it's been 7 months. My left shoulder is about 90% healed from where it was. And I mean, I don't have 100% movement, but I have majority, and I have no pain in my left shoulder at all, unless I overstress it, which would be normal. My right shoulder is about, like I said, a little bit behind. It's really free. It's not completely finished yet. It's got some time to go. But overall, I'm a very, very happy, satisfied person because this is magical. It's working. Right. With that came with the physical therapy, and then I did acupuncture too. It comes with it, and if I do my PT and I do my exercise routine and I do the acupuncture, my body knows the difference. It's just amazing. I don't know how to explain it. It just feels better. It's just the healing is going on. So that's kind of my little story. So
you made this really interesting distinction between healing and fixing. And you chose the healing path. Are you happy that you chose that particular path?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Fixing is temporary, at least for me. And I thought, I don't want to have to do something to get fixed that's temporary, and then later, as I get even older, have to get fixed again or something. It's not permanent. And I didn't know. I thought that was the only choice there was, to get fixed and then try to pick the best person that can fix you the best you can. But yeah, if I can heal, I'd rather have my body heal, because it's just going to be longer lasting and just better.
You became visually moved when you talked about sleeping through the night. And I know it's very common for people with shoulder pain. The shoulder pain is one thing, but what really impacts their life adversely is the fact that they can't sleep. And going without sleep is a pretty big deal. What was it like for you when you started to be able to sleep through the night again?
You know, if you can't sleep, you can't function. You can do all-nighters every once in a while for a little bit of time, but without sleep, it's just grumpy, tired. Pain is always in the back of your mind, so you just trying to function, do anything else, gets harder and harder and harder. So yeah, it was maybe not euphoric, but for me it was euphoric. And I think anyone that's gone through a constant pain, I feel for those who have constant pain, that just controls your life. I mean, I didn't do medications or anything like that, but when I got to the point, this is the first time in my life that at that point that I had ever had an injury that was dominating me, when the injury wouldn't let me sleep anymore. But probably 6-8 months prior to me getting the stem cell shots and deciding it, I wasn't sleeping at all. I mean, literally at all. I'm sure my body was resting a little bit, but when you can't be in any one position for literally more than 15 seconds, it's like, that's all you think about. It's not what I want to think about, but that's what you think about. It's just, and it's worse when you're not doing anything. You can kind of mask it when you're busy, doing work or engaged. But I work on the computer. I use my hands to write. I'm driving all day long. I'm in meetings. So that's all those positions, and my shoulders are like, I don't want to do this.
Right.
I don't want to lift my arm up to play on the keyboard. I don't want to raise a pencil or write something, and I don't want to sit here in this conference chair where there's no comfortable position and try to listen to what's going on and be part of what's going on. It was, that's night and day. It was amazing.
Do you know what kind of stem cells were used?
Yeah, I don't know the specifics, but they're told from a healthy mom, from umbilical cords, treated right away, however they do that treatment. But I did learn that there are different ways that people deal with stem cells and how they treat it, and that's very, very important. So after Dr. Lawrence kind of explained what they did, not knowing the industry, I thought, okay, that sounds pretty good, and talked to some other people who have taken their own stem cells and replaced them. I don't think it works as well, personally. Maybe everybody's different, but I didn't want to take mine. I figured mine were asleep, and they needed something else to get them going. So.
Thanks so much for taking the time, and congratulations on regaining your health.
Well, thanks. Yeah, happy person now.
Well, there we have some real-world examples about how all this stuff works. Again, I think it's important to see the actual application as compared to just describing it abstractly, so we're happy to bring this to you. Wow, well, that completes episode 5. Really means a lot for me to be here with you, so thank you for taking this journey with us. Also, let me just remind you that you can own Pain Revealed. Having all this information at your fingertips whenever you want it, and the ability to share it with other people is something I think is very important. There are different packages. You simply can just pick the one that's right for you and then acquire it. It helps support our mission and what we're doing here with Pain Revealed, and I think will add a lot of value to your life and other people's lives that you might share this with. So we're heading now into episode 6. We're really moving down the road here, and I'm excited to bring this additional information to you. So I'll look forward to seeing you on the inside of episode 6.
This is probably the biggest advance in medicine since the advent of antibiotics. And the concept of stem cells will make a major, major change in all the medicine of the future.
Most people, when they have back pain, they'll go to the doctor and they'll get an x-ray or an MRI and they'll be told, you have degenerative disc disease. You know, that sounds like a very daunting thing, like it's a disease, like it's an unnatural thing. Our bodies, our discs, are designed to degenerate. That's just how our bodies are made to age. It doesn't necessarily equate to pain.
You can't lose hope. I remember living in chronic pain, and I lost hope. I don't know what to do. You'll find that hope in a natural therapy like essential oils. And I want to encourage you, I want you to expect it, because we need to have faith.
Right.
So if you're going to waste your money buying all this supplements and oils and not believe it's going to work, don't even try.
Right. I'm very hopeful, and I'm ready to do it, and hopefully I'll get better.
We have hope, and it's nice to have hope. Just the fact that so many people have had good fortune with this particular process, it's worth a shot, for sure.